I think sometimes we forget that there's like a whole new life yet to be lived. There's still so much possibility and newness that's still unexplored. And we get to continue to recreate ourselves.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero?
I think what we wanted to do today was a little different than what we did last time and be a little bit kind of strategic. And we were going to talk for the Friday episode, which was my recovery-based episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just give you a little kind of heads up in my direction that I'm going to go with it. And it has to do with the people that I see once we solve their addiction problems. And by that, I mean the thing they came for. They don't really know oftentimes what to do with their life. And I thought that would tie really well into your career, intuitive kind of search, preparation, and an action plan element in that program that we've been talking about.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was just thinking in the shower, I was having shower thoughts.
I love it.
And I was thinking about how the connection between career and purpose, and how healing it's been to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And how like really my purpose saved me. I don't talk a lot about addiction, but when I found yoga, I was smoking weed every day. I was like binge drinking to the point of blackout in high school and college. So I really do feel like my purpose saved me.
Yeah.
Like in a big, big way. So anyway, that was something that came to me that might be relevant to tie in like the purpose of purpose in recovery.
Yeah. And I think maybe we can just kind of jump into it. You know, obviously we've met before. You've been on the podcast, you've been on Wednesday episode, but I was thinking in so many conversations that you and I have had, and as part of prepping to be part of our kind of elite coaching, what I'm always thinking is about what the people who reach out to me really need to get their life where they want it, right? I feel like too often in this world, the assumption is that what worked for me will work for the person in front of me. I'm a little interested in that because what I went through informs my work and my experience in the world. But I want to help a lot of people that are not me. And there are a lot of versions of not me, right? Women are not me. People who are gay are not me. People who work in fields that I would never fathom setting a foot in. People who use heroin are not me. People there's so many examples that I always feel like the last thing I want to do is assume that if you just follow my example perfectly, you will get the life I got. And you know, one of the things that you talked about at Glow in your session was about happiness and about not letting other people kind of control that or rob us of our ability to be happy. And in the follow-up conversations that we've had, I realized, you know, a lot of people come to me to help with their addictions. They drink too much. They use too many drugs. They watch too much porn or cheat on their significant other or their girlfriends too much. They eat too many sugary foods. Whatever the thing is, they come for a specific addiction. Those are just the most common ones. And I'm pretty damn good. And when somebody is serious, I don't think it has to be me, but I'm pretty damn good at helping people lock into why they want to change and getting them to at least substantially improve what they're doing in that front. Like drink 80-90% less, stop watching porn, stop using drugs, whatever the thing is, right? Cut their sugar intake by 80%. And what I tell everybody all the time is, look, this is the easy part. Getting you to stop doing the thing is the easy part. Dealing with life after that happens in a way that maintains and allows you to maintain this new way of living, that's the hardest part. And when you and I started talking about careers, purpose, what people do a third to a half of their life, right? Literally by hours per day. That is such a huge part of the equation. I know it is for me. I know it is for you. And so I thought, how cool would it be to just have a conversation with the people who are tuning in right now, who are saying, look, I'm having a terrible time handling my mental health and addiction, or I'm having a great time, or I'm having a moderately successful time. But what the hell comes after this, right? Like, I'm definitely realizing I don't really love my life all that much, or there are aspects of my life that have been pushing what I call the antecedents or the promoters of my addictive behavior. I now know, and everybody who works with me knows pretty quickly, and I help them figure it out. Our coaches help them figure it out. You help them figure it out, what those pieces of the puzzle are. But figuring out what the pieces of the puzzle are that are making your life unbearable and stressful is very different than creating a different life that doesn't have those pieces in it or that minimizes it. So whether you want to talk about purpose and career right off the bat, or if there are other elements that when you talk to people about kind of how do you find what you want to do and how to move forward in the world, let's kind of almost do like a little mini discovery session for the people listening so that they can go with us through this experience, in like 20, 30 minutes, so a very short period of time, and have some revelations themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's always good to talk to you.
Yeah.
I just think about how I felt so lost when I was smoking weed every day. I was doing it because it was just around me. Like my friends were doing it. It was a part of like social circles. And I had just moved to New York, and there was a period of time where smoking weed felt really good. And then doing it every day, it started to not feel good. And I knew that it didn't feel good. And I knew that it was contributing to a sense of like kind of lethargy, cloudiness. I didn't have clarity of mind, but I didn't know what else to be doing, because I knew I wanted to hang out with my friends, because hanging out with my friends felt good. It felt good to be with my friends, and my friends would hand me a bowl and then I would smoke it. And I didn't even think that I could say, oh no, I don't want to do this right now. It was so default. It was a pattern at that point.
It was habitual.
And I wanted to fit. I didn't really care that much about fitting in, but like there was a little bit of peer pressure there. And I didn't have the strength of agency at the time to say no. I wasn't saying no. And literally I was, at the time I was smoking cigarettes, which was like a short stint in my life, but I was smoking cigarettes pretty regularly, and I was smoking weed. And I took a yoga class, and it was the pranayama Ujjayi breathing. Ujjayi means oceanic breath. It's like the whisper Darth Vader sound in yoga, where you breathe in and out through the back of your throat. And it's a very, like, when you do that for a whole hour and a half, it's a very powerful breath. And when I came out of that class, I literally was like, I never want to smoke a cigarette. I was like, I felt the yoga high. I literally felt high from the yoga practice. Yeah. And I was like, I want to feel this kind of well-being. I don't want to feel the kind of high that pulls me away from myself and out of myself and into that cloudy space.
So it was a moment. You can identify the moment where that change happened.
Yes. Yeah, I remember I was on 77th in Amsterdam. I came out of the studio. It was a summer day. I had just taken a hot power yoga class. I had showered after, so I was like fresh and clean. I was in New York City on the Upper West Side. And I was like, I'm going to get a green juice and I'm going to walk in the park because I want to feel good. And the reason that this connects to purpose is that's where this all began for me, is I want to feel this way. That is this feeling of a sense of well-being and purpose and service and connection. And at the time when I was smoking, and I was smoking pot quite a bit.
Yeah.
I was totally lost. I did not know what I was doing with my life. I was like, I had just transitioned out of this college program where I had spent 11 years pursuing musical theater as if I was going to be on Broadway. And
Okay.
then at the end of my senior year of college, I had this like awakening where I was like, I don't want to do this as my career. I want to go to the Peace Corps. I want to do something that's of more direct service to people. But I had no idea how to show up and how to serve. I was so lost. And
Where did you figure that out? Like, where were you? What brought you that knowledge that you didn't want to go in that direction anymore?
I read, well, it was a number of things. The college that I went to, the Conservatory Musical Theater program, is one of the best in the country and was a totally cutthroat, competitive, beat you down and see who's last standing kind of environment. And it's just that works for some people. Like they just, beat them down, like see if they really feel passionate for this thing and see who's left standing. That actually works for some people. For me, where I was at in my healing path and some of the traumas that I endured growing up, I needed to be nurtured. I needed to be cared for. I needed to be loved and supported and encouraged. I needed people around me kind of lifting me up and affirming the good aspects of me, not pointing out all of the flaws. And so I read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, to answer your question. And the tagline of that book is Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And I started to wake up to this idea that I had a purpose. I had never before considered that I had a purpose. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The reason I put my finger up and I wanted to go thank you for down that rabbit hole for a moment is, Mike Rowe, Mike Rowe, he did that Discovery show, The Dirty Job, America's Dirtiest Jobs or something like that.
No, I don't.
Okay, so he has a TED Talk and he kind of talks down at this idea of purpose in your work. And he said some of the people that I know that are most successful, their work is not purposeful. It's they found a need and they fulfilled that need. And he talks about like people who clean roadkill and all this kind of stuff. What's funny to me is I still believe that for those people, there's a purpose behind what they do. And it could just be that they're in a place in the world where there are not a lot of opportunities to make good money to support your family. And one of their core purpose values is to really flourish and help their family live comfortably. And so they are willing to go out there and fill a need that most of us would think is too dirty or whatever you want to put around that specific job description and say, you know what, I care so much about my family being comfortable. I'm going to go and clean roadkill off the road and make really good money doing it. The reason I think what you're saying is so important for people to tune into is your purpose could be anything. A lot of us, we live in this wellness-based sort of new agey world now. And if you are in that world, in our sphere with our friends, then you think your purpose has to be to save the world from hunger or to help people who are homeless. And those are all amazing purposes, by the way. The values surrounding purpose like that are incredible. What I like about what you just said is you didn't even realize that you could have a purpose. And the moment that you attune to the fact that you could, all of a sudden what I'm hearing, and I want you to go more deeply into how that happened in that process for you, but all of a sudden you attune to just how wide open the possibilities are in terms of what you want to dedicate your life to. And to take it back to that TED Talk with Mike Rowe and The Dirtiest Jobs, once you find your purpose, and I found in graduate school almost by mistake, you'll do anything. Because once the thing you do is aligned with your purpose, the stuff you've got to do is not terrible, terrifying, annoying work. They are just steps to move you along the path towards achieving your purpose. And if any of you aligned right now have ever connected to anything that felt purposeful in that way, I put one foot in front of the other every morning and come and record podcasts like these and go create content for my people on my courses and do Instagram stories and all that stuff for no other reason than because every once in a while I get an email from somebody whose life I helped, and that fills my purpose bucket. And I go, I guess I'm on the right path, and I keep doing it. So you read the book and then you realize, oh my God, I can have purpose. How did you start going about, because this is the most common question I get when we talk about this. How did you go about trying to uncover what your purpose is?
Yeah. So I could go into like the details of the story, and I will for a second, but I just want to mention something that you just said that also answers this question is, there's two concepts that I learned that shifted my connection to my purpose. And this is the heart of the career manifestation program. My course is it started with something that I learned while I was working at Lululemon. And I was doing goal coaching for employees and guests and ambassadors at the company. And I came across a TED Talk by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And speaking to what Mike Rowe is talking about, and like the person who's cleaning up the roadkill, it's actually not about what we do, and it's not even about how we do it. It's about at the deepest layer, like why we feel called from the inside to move out into the world and to be of service. Or
that's such a great talk. I will have a link for those of you who haven't seen it, but it's so many people's favorite talk. You've got to check it out.
Yeah. And so for years, I worked with that, and I became obsessed with coming up with my own why statement. I wanted to figure out my why. I wanted to name my why, Shannon's why, the reason I'm here, in a succinct sentence, as best as I could possibly articulate it. And so what I came up with through looking at some different things I was doing at the time I was teaching yoga, I was doing my podcast Soulfeed, still am, and was coaching. And I looked at all of those external what's, like a podcast, coaching, yoga. And at the time they felt really separate to me. I was like, should I be a coach? Should I be a yoga teacher? Should I be an interviewer? They all felt a little disconnected. But I knew at the root I was doing them all for the same reason. And that was my why. So the why statement that I came up with is, I am a light that is here to illuminate the power that already exists in every human being. I'm here to be a reminder to people of the power that lives within them, and to help them reclaim whatever power they've lost because of society, addictions, and all the list goes on and on. So that's one thing. The other thing that's been really transformative to me is the yoga concept, the concept from the ancient yoga tradition of Dharma, which is spelled Dharma. And Dharma is essentially, it's the same thing. It's your why. But Dharma explains it a little bit differently. It's this idea that each of us has a unique code. Like, we are here for a reason, and it's our soul's work to figure out what that reason is. And for some people, they pick up the roadkill, and they might not think, oh, this is a dirty job. They might think, this being has died, and I want to respect its life and clear the path for people to make it down this road. So
yeah, totally.
There's a book,
I don't know their purpose.
Yeah, there's a book about a mailman. I wonder if you've read this book. I can't think of the name of it right now. But it's about how this mailman delivers the mail and has relationships with his entire community and changes lives, receives gifts, knows he has watched families' children grow up and knows their grandchildren now. He's seen generations pass. He loves his job in the community. And the mail delivery for him is just about it's just the means through which he connects with people. So that to me is what's been so powerful and so healing, is figuring out not my purpose just in terms of what I'm doing out there in the world, although that's super important, but what that actually means to me, Shannon, internally. because it's actually, I've had enough success to experience that you can get things that you think you want that the world says are great, but that doesn't mean I'm living in alignment with my purpose. And it doesn't mean it's going to feel good to me.
Yeah. So true. So true. I mean, again, I think the thing that's important to understand about that is oftentimes when people first try to look for a purpose, they look for the things that they've heard worked for others. And like so many other things that we talk about, it's looking outside of yourself to answer a question that is really answered inside. I found mine by mistake. I mean, honestly, when I started my grad school at Cal State Long Beach, I couldn't get a job. It's part of my story. I tell people all the time, like I could not get hired because there's that question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And I had to answer yes, and then nobody would hire me. And so when I was in grad school, my advisor eventually gave me a job in his like research lab, but his research lab was a homeless food bank that did research on people around their addictions and studied HIV and hepatitis C. I would have never in my life picked a place like that to be the place where I would have found my purpose. But when I was doing interviews with people in the place and doing my work and doing my research, I loved it. I loved it like nothing I've ever loved before. I would go home and keep doing more work. And that was not the old version of me. And I went, this is insane. Like, I care more about this than I've ever cared about anything else before. And that's when it clicked. And it's been the thing that has driven me ever since, is figuring out the person in front of me, what's their need, what can I help with, who do I know that can help otherwise if I'm not the one, and then kind of like sending them on their way to have a better life. And the fact that I found mine by mistake and that you kind of landed onto yours is one of the reasons why when people ask me how to find, and I know you have a course and we will put a link to that course for people to help find their own. I don't know how you answer this. I tell them you got to explore. You got to try things. I don't have an answer for you. There's nothing I can do. There's no questionnaire that I know that I can ask you that if I do, you will find your purpose.
Well, let me just like affirm that statement for a second, because at the time I started the Peace Corps application, and it was going to take like over a year to complete and process. And I was like, this is not what I thought it was. I applied to Teach for America, but it was 2008, just right after the Great Recession.
Oh, God.
And that was the highest number of Teach for America applicants ever to the date. And because everyone was like, we don't know if we're going to be able to get jobs, let's do Teach for America, which is great. I got rejected by Teach for America. I went and worked on a biodynamic organic farm and lived in a tent for a summer upstate in New York and cooked. I cooked in a vegetarian kitchen for a summer camp program for a whole summer. And then I moved to New York and I had no idea. I was a host at a restaurant. I worked for a catering company at the NASDAQ in Times Square. I was grasping for any kind of like trying to figure out what felt good internally. And I remember I had a moment. It was the dead of winter in New York. It was my first winter in New York, which if you've never had a first winter in New York City, it's brutal because you're New Yorkers are pedestrians. So you're like out in the winter. And then when you're on the subway cars, they get packed at rush hour. Everyone has their coats. So you get packed like sardines, and then you're cold outside, but then you get hot in the subway car when everyone's packed in there, and you barely have any room to move. So I had my big North Face on, and I was having a really bad day, and I felt really down. And I kind of squeezed my way into a seat, and I closed my eyes and I put music on my iPod, and I closed my eyes. I went so deep inside myself. I was in so much emotional pain at the time because I felt so lost. And I heard one voice, and I believe this is like the voice of my deepest self, like the God within. I heard, Shannon, you are here for more than this. You're here for something bigger than this. You're here for a reason. And I just had this knowing I'm here for a reason. And everything outside of me was messy. There was no clarity. There was no yoga. I hadn't done a yoga training. I wasn't working for Lululemon yet. I wasn't a coach. I didn't have a podcast. There was nothing other than a new earth, awakening to your life's purpose,
right?
And myself. And So what I will say, this is something that's super practical, is like, if you can get yourself into a community of people who share your energy, your values, who inspire you, who are role models, who may have templates for what it is that you are inspired to create, even if you don't know what that is, that has 100% been the reason for my forward movement and success. Is I followed the path of the people who could help me find my way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so am I hearing that it was through other people, and now later on service for other people, et cetera, but it was through other people that you actually were able to find that purpose?
Yeah, it was my friend who said, "Hey, you're going to love this hot yoga class, and I have a guest pass. Come with me." And then that's the studio I ended up working at the front desk at. And that's the studio where a woman came in to do her yoga teacher training. And she said, "I want you to be a teacher of my yoga method." And I said, "I don't know how I'm going to afford this." She said, "Tell me what you can pay, and I'll make the rest work." And she basically made it 100% possible for me to do that yoga training. And then it was the private clients who I started working with. So I guess that's what I mean, is like, I had to show up for my purpose. I had to have the desire and the action and the willingness. But I also needed all of the people who showed up in my space and said, "Yes, I want to help you. I want to show you." And the more that I moved into that world, the more that I realized, like, oh, this thing that I want to create isn't some like far off. Well, I should say, this thing that I want to create, I didn't even know what I wanted to create. There was just a space for me to finally explore what I wanted to create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you did a lot to replace. It sounds like you did a lot to switch, and you trained and you worked, again, in a really short time, because obviously there's a process to this. What were some of the discoveries, some of the moments that really resonated for you, and you hit and you went, "Oh, this is one of those things"?
In my yoga training, there was a whole aspect of the training that was just about personal development. It wasn't about physical stuff at all. And I loved that so much. I loved all of the personal development tools. I was thirsty for them. I didn't even know I was thirsty for them, but I was just like having so many epiphanies in that part of the training. And then Lululemon, when I started working for Lululemon, going through my 10-year vision process. This is actually what we do in the beginning of the career manifestation course, is we start with intention for why are you doing the course, and then vision. And we do a vision exercise where you get to really explore, like playfully and creatively, what you want different aspects of your life to look like through using the power of image, and exploring your life 10 years out, 5 years out, 1 year out, 6 months out. And that was so transformative for me. I had never had anyone say to me, "Shannon, your job right now, I'm going to pay you on the clock to tell me beautifully as you can possibly tell me, a 10-year vision for your life. You need to have this done by this date. You need to submit it. We're going to hang it on the wall in our store." That's what we did at Lululemon. All of our goals, all of the employees' goals were hung, and visions were hung on the walls.
Wow.
For everyone to see. So that was a really important process for me. And then the third one I'll share is when I realized that I wanted to be a coach. I was at the Landmark Forum. And I was in the second part of the Landmark Forum, which is the advanced course, is what it's called. And I just had this huge realization that not only do I want to be a coach, but for my entire life, this is how I've been showing up, actually. Showing up to support people, showing up to see people for the best that they possibly are. That actually what I want to become is who I've always been. And that was a really powerful moment of realization that is my purpose.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. So, the reason I wanted this to bring this to people's attention is too often people think that it's the quitting, the removing, the reducing of the drinking, the sex, the food, or whatever in their life that will solve their problems. And oftentimes what we find is it's not that it's the opposite, it's just they're related, but normally inversely. When you start removing some of these things you've been relying on, the other elements of your life, the other factors you've been dissatisfied with start peeking their head out big time. And that's when it becomes really important to create change. And what I love about it, and again, we'll have a link to your course, but I'm sure this will help people by itself, is to give people permission to say, you know what, your life up to now hasn't worked out the way you want it to. That's okay. Let's make it work out the way you want it to. And we can always create change. You can't be too late to the game. I just released a podcast about this. You haven't missed the starting gun. It's not too late. You're not too old. Right now is the best time to make a change if you know that what you're doing is not right.
1,000%.
I love it. So thank you so much. I felt like this is such a different conversation than the ones we've had in the past around meditation and happiness, because those things are all important, but this is really pragmatic, right? Like, this is, what are you going to do tomorrow to improve your life? Well, if you don't love what you do daily, that is causing more stress and more strain on you than you know. And it's time to just make a change.
Yeah. And I think, like, if there's one thing that, people will take away whatever they will take away. But if there's like one thing that I think I would want to leave everyone with here is just this sense that you have a purpose. And like Adi, you just said, it's not too late in the game. Like, it's never too late in the game. I was just talking about this in a coaching session with someone yesterday. Sometimes we forget, especially as we get older and we have like many years and experience behind us. I think sometimes we forget that there's like a whole new life yet to be lived. There's still so much possibility and newness that's still unexplored. And we get to continue to recreate ourselves. So just kind of like trusting in the knowing that you have a purpose, and to show up and explore what that is, and really to see how that calls you forth into ... like
Definitely.
the next phase of healing, addiction, and beyond.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples. Maybe if I do an intro for this one, I'll talk about some of them. And not that we want to use this as the example for anything necessarily, but Ray Kroc, the guy who like started McDonald's, or created the McDonald's empire out of a little burger stand, started the thing out when he was like 50. That's when he started that project. I think too many people think, oh, it's I can't start anything new. I'm not 20 anymore. That doesn't matter. The question I always ask is like, do you want to be this miserable in 15 years, or would you like to change it? Because if you want to stay unhappy, you don't have to change anything. But if you're unhappy in your work, in your career, in your place of life, in literally like your house, in your relationship, or any of those things, I just put the quote up a couple of days ago. If you change nothing will change. And so I think this is the biggest message for everybody is there are tools, there is a path to figuring out what to do in your daily life that will pay off and will make you happier. And if you are happy, you will do less things that are harmful. And as you do less things that are harmful, you will become healthier, and the cycle will keep feeding on itself.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Adi, for everyone listening too, I don't know if you're going to mention this at another point, but we can give a discount to Ignited listeners who are interested in participating in the career manifestation course. I'd love to have people come join if they feel so inspired.
I love it. Okay, perfect. I didn't know that, but let's put a link for that in the course, in the show notes here for them. And I hope some people take some action and get themselves out of whatever current situation they're unhappy with and start finding their purpose, finding joy, waking up wanting to participate in whatever it is their day has for them, like we've been lucky to do.
Totally. Yeah. And and just so people know, it's 7 modules. It's in alignment with the 7 chakras. So it's the 7 energy centers. There's a module for each energy center, and there's 7 meditations, and then 7 PDF guides with homework to specifically activate your purpose. So it's it's a fun time. Come hang out with the Career Manifestation peeps.
Hell yeah, let's do it. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Shannon, for coming and talking about something more serious, I'll say, and kind of, real world pragmatic for the people who tune in, because I think a lot of times these actionable tips take the spiritual and the more ethereal that we talk about and then connect it to people's lives so they can experience joy and happiness.
Thank you so much, Adi.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, check out Shannon's course. It's pretty incredible. And then check in with us, right? Take a screenshot right now. Let us know what resonated. If you're doing the course, let us know what your vision is and where you want to go so we can help you manifest that by putting it out into the world. Thank you so much, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.